This first story from 2004 is about one of our favorite holiday traditions, stealing a kiss under the mistletoe.
I guess you can go back to France and probably even further for the goddess of love. And what it was is that she told every living thing on earth to leave her son, the god of peace, alone. And yet, in every good story, there's a bad guy. And so what the bad guy did is he talked the god of peace brother into shooting the god of peace with an arrow made out of mistletoe. And see, mistletoe was exempt from the plea because mistletoe is not rooted in the ground. It's rooted inside another living thing. Well, every story actually has a good ending in that regard, in that the goddess of love petitioned, and her petition was granted, and it said she was so happy that she cried tears of joy, and her tears of joy produced the pearly white berries, that at that point in time the berries turned from red to white.
Since mistletoe grows high in trees, it's difficult to bring down even a few twigs. We met one resident of Christiana who agreed to demonstrate a time-tested method for harvesting the holiday plant.
Well, every year I try to come over and knock a little bit down for the family and friends. Well, usually I just get up under the tree and knock some down with a shotgun. Use a shotgun.
We're sad to report that since that story originally aired, Monty has passed away, but we're grateful to his family for allowing us to use this footage.
It's been 2 years since we visited with David Sr., and he's still passionate about his creations. Senior Assistant Director of Telecommunications started collecting regular-sized nutcrackers, but things got a little out of hand. After collecting about 200 regular-sized figures, he supersized things and started making 7-foot-tall versions of the traditional Christmas toy.
Actually, I started making this nutcrackers 5 years ago. And the first one I ever made, believe it or not, it looks really good. The president of the university has that.
Miss Elizabeth McPhee has her own extensive collection of nutcrackers. And when the president saw a photo of one of Senior's creations, he decided to purchase it as a gift for his wife.
And I was totally speechless. I just couldn't say anything. I just had to just stand there in amazement. The sword you can remove from the nutcracker's hand, and his shoes are just beautifully done. They're made out of tin and they're laced up, and if you look at the nutcracker's face, it's very similar to the other nutcrackers that I have in the room.
A loyal Blue Raider fan, one of his creations is an MTSU football player wearing home jersey number 19. It's displayed at MTSU's Sports Hall of Fame, and it's just a shade over 6 feet tall. His father, Edgar Sr., was a Navy admiral, and it should come as no surprise that some parts of his creations carry naval insignias.
The reason why you see naval, emblems or naval insignia, is just because I grew up in a military family. To be exact, in a Navy family, my dad retired as an admiral.
In the classic story of the Nutcracker, a little girl's Christmas gift magically comes to life. As in the story, Senior says his creations also take on a life of their own.
When I actually glue the mustache and paint the eyes in there and put all the eyebrows and all the stuff, suddenly, this wooden, metal toy nutcracker comes alive.
Well, welcome back to more of Out of the Blue. I'm Bob Pondillo. Thanks for joining us. This segment of the program takes us inside Middle Tennessee State. We talk to some interesting people doing interesting things. And because coming up about next year, September, I believe, 2011, is the centennial anniversary of Middle Tennessee State. And the history department here at MTSU is doing some really interesting things, taking sort of a retrospective, a look back at many portions of the university. And today we have a special guest. Dr. Ellen Garrison is here, professor at the Department of History, retired. But is also working on some really fabulous, in this case, an essay. And right now the essay is titled, Getting on the Gravy Train, World War II in Middle Tennessee State College. And I know we talked earlier, you said, well, I'm thinking about changing that. But
it's a good title.
It is a good title because it is about how we did after the Second World War, or maybe a little before the Second World War.
We actually started in 1940.
In 40, so okay. So we were, in Europe, they were in the war, but we weren't in it.
We weren't in it.
Well, now tell us about that. How did we get on the gravy train, and what was it, and why did we do it, and et cetera?
Well, Q.M. Smith is sort of the dominant figure of the Depression, World War II, and the post-war.
Now, he was the president of the university.
He was the president. He was also a member of the first graduating class. And he understood survival. He was a survivor. And he took advantage of all of the opportunities, but he also kind of was a visionary because he, in conjunction with Prentice Cooper, the governor, had an understanding of the potential role aviation could play in Middle Tennessee. So the state had a Bureau of Aviation long before any other state did.
I didn't know that.
Including a program to train women pilots because they figured if they could train women, people wouldn't be afraid of flying. And
get out, really?
No lie, and one I wound up as our flight instructor here. So that was kind of a focus. That's why Arnold is where it is, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And Q.M. Smith knew that if we were going to survive, we had to get male students on campus. And to do that, we needed to do a specialized program. We weren't big enough to get, major programs.
Right.
So he started under the NYA in 1939 and 40.
What is NYA again?
National Youth Administration.
Okay.
It was one of the New Deal programs. He got their money to build our hangar, build our runway, and start a civilian pilots club. So he had all of that in place before the war started.
Very good. Very thoughtful. Or a visionary, as you said.
He was definitely visionary.
Yeah.
And then when the war started, the glamour branch was the Air Corps. Everybody wanted to be in the Air Corps. And what happened was a lot of young men volunteered for the Air Corps. They passed their physical. They had so many people wanting to go in the Air Corps, they couldn't induct them. And so they set up something called the ACER, which was the Air Corps Enlisted Reserve, and this got these guys in the service, and they just sat home and waited until they could find a way to train.
So ACER is an acronym for this?
Air Corps Enlisted Reserve.
I didn't know that. In fact, when I read it on they give you a little cheat sheet before you come over, I checked online, and I couldn't find anything about ACER.
I couldn't either.
Well, why did it go away? I mean, it's an interesting thing.
Well, it went away, but because by June of '44 they didn't need it anymore.
Oh, I see.
But what they needed was a way to get pilots trained quickly. Well, once they set up ACER, they wound up with two problems. The National Air Corps, Hap Arnold, wound up with two problems.
Right.
One, there were a lot of young men who'd enlisted and who were sitting home twiddling their thumbs. And a lot of them were beginning to say, well, I'm going Navy, they've got pilots too, et cetera. And the Selective Service was looking at this huge pool of young men and going, why are they all sitting home when we need them in the Army?
Right.
So in order to do something with them, Hap Arnold comes up with this plan to put them through basic training on college campuses.
Is this sort of like the beginning of ROTC or something?
Not really.
Yeah,
I mean, it's modeled on ROTC, but it's specifically to solve this problem.
To solve this Air Force problem. Okay.
Hap Arnold was no fool either. And so what they did was they contracted with, let me get my dates right. On January 23rd, the Secretary of War Stimson approves this program to train the cadets on college campuses. Within 2 weeks, Clearly, QM Smith knew what was going on because he'd already asked the faculty, and this is my favorite scene, on the 18th day of January at the first faculty meeting of the year, he asked his faculty, by the way, how many of you guys could teach math or physics if you had to? And he doesn't tell them why, he doesn't tell them what's going on, just ask.
So he's asking history teachers, English teachers, how
English
many
teachers, history teachers, home ec teachers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They wound up with like only 4 teachers that weren't involved in this program.
That's amazing.
Of the entire faculty.
That people could even know. If you ask me, I'm out. You know, I couldn't do that.
Well, I don't know. If my job was on the line, I'd figure out I could fake
quickly.
it if I had to.
Okay.
But he gets the notice on February 6th that we've been awarded the 11th Training Detachment. It's going to let us survive. The problem is we've got problems with our dorm, our cafeteria, and we don't have a physics lab.
Wow.
So he goes to Prentice Cooper, with whom he's on, Governor Cooper, with whom he's on very good terms. Tells him, I need $30,000 and I've got 14 days to do all of this. And Cooper says, sure, pay me back when you get the contract. He renovates the cafeteria, and there's an interesting sideline story to what that did to the football team. He renovates the cafeteria. He builds a physics lab. He gives the girls who are housed in Lyon Hall 4 hours notice that they have to vacate Lyon Hall and move into the other dorm.
Because the guys are coming.
Because the guys are coming.
And they need a place to stay, I see.
And he gets the
4
dorm.
4 hours.
4 hours. And as far as I know, he provided them no help. Nobody is telling me he provided any help. I'm
right.
sure.
Just get going.
Just,
exactly.
Move already. Yeah. And they renovate the dorm, and on March 1st, we get our first class of cadets. So
back when government can do things, apparently.
Well, apparently you could. I mean, it's like Roosevelt and the CCC. I mean, clearly this was not new to Smith.
Right.
But when he decided to move, he moved. And people didn't say no to QM Smith any more than they did to FDR.
Boy, that's for sure. That's for sure. Based on what I've heard about it. There's so many other things to talk about, but we have a very limited time, so we're going to have to stop. But maybe we'll have you back again and to talk more. Okay.
Can I add the funniest thing about the whole thing?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The day he announced to the girls they had 4 hours to move out, apparently the problem he couldn't solve was coat hangers. So he runs a notice in the Murfreesboro paper asking the local community to donate coat hangers, and please don't bring them to campus, take them to the Red Cross.
Okay.
And that's how he got enough coat hangers for the cadets.
That's amazing. That you'd even need coat hanger, or you'd have to ask people to bring you coat hanger.
Yeah, and you have to tell them, don't come to campus.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's my second favorite story.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff like that in the essays that are being written, directed by the history department about the coming centennial here at MTSU. The one that Dr. Ellen Garrison wrote, the professor from the history department, retired now, is about getting on the gravy train, World War II and Middle Tennessee State College, and how the ACER program came here, and it's fascinating. This essay, among others, will be available next year sometime, right?
It will be. Dr. David Rowe, Dr. Jan Leone have been quarterbacking this for about 1.5 years now. And our focus, and mine just fits in really nicely, is the interaction between the town and the university, both in bringing the university here, how each changed the other.
Fascinating
So
stuff.
my coat hangers work real good.
Very good. The coat hanger story. Can't lose.
Can't lose the coat hanger story.
All right. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it, Ellen, for being here
Show
with us today. And we'll be back with more of Out of the Blue in just a moment.